Have you been there a long time?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this presentation. My name is Alyssa Hoang.
And I'm Tyler, and together we're going to be presenting Homescreen, which is a project we worked on during the summer and continue to work on along with our colleagues Christian and Arjun, who couldn't make it today. So Homescreen is a user-friendly portal designed to make language data contribution simple, engaging, and efficient. Our digital world should feel like home to everybody, no matter what language they speak. And this idea really goes beyond just translating text. It's about creating an online space where the time, date, and words on your screen feel natural and personal. Homescreen really represents that vision. It's a place where technology meets familiarity, where accessibility and inclusivity shape how we all connect. So traditionally, as you probably know, language data collection through the CLDR survey tool is a bit of a lengthy and pretty technical process, and the UI can be a bit difficult to navigate for your beginner user. And so although a lot of people are really willing to spend the time and effort contributing their language data, when they're met with this complicated screen and input method, it can feel a little overwhelming or confusing on where to start. And so Homescreen's goal is to really work side by side with the CLDR survey tool to break down some of these barriers to entry. And to do so, Homescreen breaks down the data input process into smaller, digestible pieces that we call microsurveys.
So as an introduction, microsurveys are short, self-sufficient modules which both educate the user on relevant data types and collect relevant information, but before being able to answer what a decimal separator does in your language, contributors need to know what a decimal separator is. The educational benefit of Homescreen goes both ways. It helps contributors learn about the linguistic concepts and think about how their community expresses these concepts or educates these concepts and expresses them and how they might introduce such concepts. On the other hand, thoroughly and intuitively explaining how these concepts to contributors helps make them make informed entries, ensuring the data collection is accurate and relevant. The general layout of each microsurvey can be viewed as the following. First, as an introduction, these microsurveys include a quick 20-second explainer video context that introduces CLDR relevant data types through a visual and auditory aid. Say Homescreen is aiming to collect language data on how a contributor's language might represent a decimal separator. The explainer video may use a hypothetical narrative such as a food delivery app service to introduce the concept. Additional images of the UI of the food delivery app would be supplied as a visual aid. These engaging short-form videos use storytelling to make content fun, conversational, and easy to grasp for these contributors. After viewing the explainer video, the contributor is prompted to ask a short question, or the contributor is prompted to answer a short question that is designed to be completed within minutes. In this example, per se, the contributor might be asked, the food delivery service costs $20.99. In your language, what symbol would you use to write the decimal in 20.99? After answering, the microsurvey ensures accuracy with additional verification. More on that later on. And then ends with the user's job being complete. As a result, the same language data is collected from the contributor, but with an increased efficiency and user engagement.
So the real excitement comes from putting multiple microsurveys together. Homescreen structure is really designed to sort of gamify the language data collection process. So we're organizing the data types into successive levels that build on each other. And they're grouped together based on related CLDR data types. So for instance, the introductory level, level 1, might ask some pretty basic questions, such as what is the name of your language? What is the name in your language, and what is the name in English? And then level 2 might have a central theme of calendars, for example. So it asks about date words, month words, days of the week, things like that. And then level 3 might focus on relative time words and clocks. So here you can see a couple of instances of what our questions look like. what the kinds of visual examples we would provide are. So you can see here on the top right, a calendar that features shortened references to the days of the week in the Burmese or Myanmar script. And this can motivate the insight that sometimes we need to shorten the days of the week in order to have them fit into a calendar UI. And then below that, you can see a UI example where AM and PM have been shortened to A and P to motivate the need that sometimes we need to abbreviate even these abbreviations further. So these are kind of the examples that we would provide to participants in the survey to help them make the connection between these kinds of abstract concepts that we're talking about and their real applications on their phones.
Now, Homescreen is still in beta, and one of its main goals that we continue to build towards is efficiency. Why? Because we are aware of how valuable a contributor's time is. As the language data collection process relies on volunteer work, we respect this time and want to put it at the center of our efforts. Our research shows that many data points we collect are correlated, strongly correlated, meaning we can often infer one answer from the other. Instead of asking contributors to repeat their answers, these correlations help Homescreen reduce redundancy, keeping the process fast, efficient, and giving the option for people to make edits if needed. Arjun Raj, which is one of our lead researchers, one of Homescreen's lead researchers, evaluated over 20 data fields across 739 locales via the CLDR survey tool. This includes numerical formats, date and time formats, currency conventions, and abbreviations. Using conditional probability analysis, a subset of high confidence correlations was identified. These high confidence correlations were about 90% or above in confidence. With research-backed logic branching, using these inferences, contributors are only asked the questions that are absolutely necessary, keeping the process fast, efficient, and accurate at every step. For example, imagine a scenario where a contributor's language does not feature an abbreviation for the names of the days of the week. Instead of a user manually inputting blank lines or skipping past questions, this conditional logic branching cuts off this route. Then it guides a user to a more optimal route. Or in another case, imagine a scenario where the user has already inputted the full names of the months. Using the probabilistic model from the 739 locales, we found that there was a narrow month form or abbreviation that can be derived from the full month form via truncation. And we found this with a 96% success rate. Simply put, there's a high probability that the first few letters of a full month name can be a valid abbreviation. Using this inference, we can shorten the logic branch as well as utilize data-driven predictions to infer a user's answers. As another example, we found that certain kinds of number and date formats were highly correlated. As you see here, we found a strong correlation between using a dot as a decimal symbol and using a comma as a group separator in long numbers. This way, we can infer that communities that use dots also use commas, and vice versa. We automatically present this to users, allowing them to approve or reject this inference.
So we're talking a lot about efficiency, data-driven prediction, and probability, but we really want to emphasize that accuracy with our language data is at the cornerstone of Homescreen. So for a contributor's language, efficiency is absolutely not a justification for mistakes or incorrect data in the locale. Language accuracy is a main goal because every language deserves to be seen in the correct format. And so to ensure accuracy, our goal is to propose answers, give them back to the user, and allow them to make any edits as they see fit or leave notes for more nuanced explanations. And so because of its organization, its educational features, and its efficiency considerations, Homescreen really provides a smooth and supportive user experience that encourages a wider reach of people to contribute their valuable language data. And Homescreen really connects directly to the other projects that SILICON is working on, meaning that these gains ripple outwards. So you might have heard about some of these projects yesterday, mainly Lexray and Kizos, and you'll hear about another one, MokBlok, in a few minutes. But for example, the language data that's collected in Homescreen can then be visualized through mockup. MokBlok, which provides realistic and high quality UI mockups with the custom language data. So contributors can not only review their language in a text format, but they can actually see it in the UI, how it would look on an app. And this is a really easy way for them to check for any errors and edit their responses. And so once the data has gone through this quality control process, it with Lexray, which generates the CLDR compliant skeleton codes. And then Carwash and Keysos can identify character sets and suggest some keyboard layouts based on the kinds of characters that we see in the home screen data. And so in other words, efficiency at the survey stage really multiplies across the entire pipeline and makes every tool stronger together. So currently the tool is in beta and it's been designed in English, but in future stages, the microsurveys would be translated into French, Spanish, Portuguese, followed by other regionally common languages to make it as accessible as possible. And the videos, the multiple choice, the text explanations would all be translated.
Now we want to highlight that the CLDR survey tool will remain the gold standard for the CLDR data collection and will be available for contributors who are prepared for and prefer its potential rigor. Homescreen was created to work in tandem with the survey tool and act as an optional aid to the language contributor process, where contributors can go through Homescreen first, then work on the CLDR survey tool next. We also know that for some partners, contributing to the survey tool is out of the question because the open source philosophy of the CLDR is incompatible with their data sovereignty principles. We hope to make Homescreen available in these communities locally. Homescreen isn't just about the language, it's about belonging. Beyond bringing more languages into the digital sphere, one of our driving principles is for everyone to feel welcome in this world. By designing for efficiency, accessibility, and a friendly user experience, we aim for every person to see their world reflected back to them when they open their device. In doing so, we're not just localizing technology, we're also helping people everywhere feel truly at home online. Now we have a waitlist sign up here, so you guys can go visit the website, and we would love for anyone interested to join the waitlist, stay in touch, and ask us any questions. Thank you.
Now, our colleague Audrey is going to talk about MokBlok, and then I think we can take questions after that.
Hi, everyone. My name is Audrey Gao. My name is not Neev Seedani. He is sick today, so I am stepping in to give Neev's presentation on his behalf. I will do my best to convey the reasons that Neev created MokBlok and also his processes. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them to the best of my ability, but also I'm happy to give Neev's email so you guys can follow up with him. So MokBlok is a app in Silicon's DFI app ecosystem currently. We're working on integrating it with the other applications in the ecosystem, but like the description says, it's essentially a Figma template system for quality control and a screenshot library. So it serves as a UX UI design inspiration resource for digitally disadvantaged, under-resourced languages, and specifically the designers within those languages. So here's the problem statement, an introduction that Neev created. The reason that Neev really thought that this would be a powerful tool is that he found that a lot of the design principles that we use in the West and more highly resourced languages don't always apply to the cultures of under-resourced languages. And he also wanted to create a resource for people to take components of highly resourced languages, design principles, and apply them when they are appropriate. So language contributors face a unique challenge when they're verifying translations and data types. When a Cherokee speaker validates without visual context. Okay, the pattern might be. They're oftentimes working without visual context. So consider when a contributor might provide perfect translations for days of the week, but without seeing them in a calendar interface, they really don't have maybe the best idea of how the full names fit well into the standard column widths within traditional applications. For example, a Mongolian translator might not realize their abbreviated months might need different treatment in horizontal view versus vertical text orientations, etc. And so the core challenges of MokBlok aim to address the absence of an automated UI UX component generation for digitally disadvantages and the need to make language contribution attractive and efficient. There's kind of a desire for language contributors to be able to see where their language contributions might end up, what it might look like, and make any edits as they see fit. It also addresses the complexity of scaling and integrating localized design, the lack of general design standards for a variety of languages and cultures. So MokBlok takes language data provided by translators and contributors and turns them into real-world intuitive app mockups. We call these blocks. So contributors can see their translation work in context, spot issues, and fix them in real time. No formal data science, linguistic, or computer science skills needed. Think about this from a localization perspective. When a tech company localizes an application for Amharic or Cherokee, they really need to know about more than just the translations. They need to understand how these languages behave in the digital space. So here is an overview of one of the templates within one of the systems within the template bank. This contains over 130 application mockups that take translated language data sets and produce contextualized UX UI components. The system overview is straightforward but powerful. Neev created an automated solution that converts raw language data directly into culturally aware designs with real-time visual feedback. For technical implementation, MokBlok ingests a CSV file for data input, and this is a format that can be extracted from an application like Lexray or Homescreen, and these are formats that contributors generally are familiar with. They integrate into the pre-existing templates through both Figma Buzz system and their API, which gives MokBlok flexibility and scalability. Calendar interfaces. So when we work with abbreviations for months and days, like JAN for January, languages all behave differently. In Hawaii, and forgive me for not knowing how to pronounce this, Lanuali becomes LAN. In Swahili, the abbreviation is going to be different because abbreviations in that language aren't culturally common. And in other languages, the month names are descriptive phases that don't abbreviate traditionally at all. So instead of presenting contributors with spreadsheets, we like to present full UX UI mockups, a calendar UI showing their abbreviated months, a health tracker app showing their day abbreviations, a weather app displaying their temperature terminology. Context really is everything. Contributors can immediately see if something doesn't look right in their language or culture. So the second component of MokBlok addresses a different but related challenge, the lack of design standards for digitally disadvantaged languages and cultures. We know what a calendar looks like in English, Spanish, or Mandarin because thousands of applications shared similar design fundamentals. But there is an established visual language, but for other lesser resourced languages, those design standards either haven't been fully developed or could use more established principles. Consider typeface challenges that go beyond simple Unicode rendering. Tibetan stacked characters need 20 to 30% extra line height to remain legible. Arabic and Hebrew right to left interfaces need also complete mirror layouts, so not just flipped text, but also flipped UI UX components. Mongolian traditional scripts can run vertically, and many languages with tonal marks need careful spacing to prevent diacritics from colliding. These are not just character display issues, they're fundamental design considerations that should affect the entire interface architecture. So as a part of MokBlok, Neev has designed a screenshot library highlighting designs that successfully incorporate these digitally disadvantaged languages. Think Pinterest, but specifically for designers working with underserved language communities or designers within those communities. So we've built, well, Neev has built MokBlok's screenshot library, essentially Pinterest for designers, working with underserved language communities. The platform can handle up to 1,000 screenshot blocks with 20 to 30 screenshots per block across 20 pages. And that gives us a pretty massive capacity for documenting design patterns across hundreds of languages. The two-dimensional Oh, this is another example of that. Up in the top left-hand corner, you can see the two-dimensional filtering system. You can search by CLDR types, the technical categorizations within Unicode CLDR, or you can search by UX, UI categories that designers actually understand and might specifically be searching for. So if you need a date picker for Yoruba, you can search calendar plus Yoruba and see real implementations. In the UX UI community, designers never are really working in isolation. They're drawing inspiration from existing patterns and successful implementations. Similarly, designers working with digitally disadvantaged languages shouldn't have to start from scratch, and MokBlok is the first step towards that. Users can also upload screenshot blocks and application flows, create collections, search by CLDR types, language metadata, UX, UI components, and filter by script type, text direction, cultural region, etc. Here is more of that two-dimensional search system. And this specific screenshot is depicted with everyday terminology, so some of the most commonly searched for UX, UI terms. So how do these two components connect? The validated design mockup from the template system form the foundation for the database. They aren't just random designs, they're verified community approved patterns that work. As more contributors join, the library grows organically. Each contribution teaches us something new about how these languages and cultures want to exist in the digital space. The goal is for MokBlok to become a resource for designing. When a developer asks, how should a date picker work in Amharic, MokBlok hopes to have the answer backed by some community validation in as many real-world examples as possible. For those that are interested, MokBlok also features a general CLDR overview and contextualization with translated information in highly resourced languages as well. Here is a screenshot flow that kind of represents the flow from start to finish. So the goal is, again, just to summarize, integrate the Figma template, have synergy within MokBloks to empower language communities. It's really localization going beyond translation, ensuring that every language, no matter how disadvantaged, has a path to authentic, culturally appropriate digital expression. And then I also wanted to mention the relevance to the Kumoji board game that we discussed a little bit yesterday. This was created by another colleague over the summer, Diana Abernethy. She's not here today, but really excited about where we can take this board game. We wanted to emphasize that during our playtest, which was held on campus, as Diana said, we had Thai food catered. The way that the board game works is that while playing it, you generate descriptions essentially in word format for certain emojis that, again, might not translate across cultures. One example that we like to use a lot is just the crying face emoji. You know, here in America, I send that when I mean that I'm laughing hysterically, but that's not the case everywhere and across all generations, as I've really come to learn. So in our playtest, the data that was generated, we were able to analyze the data that was produced, and it had an over 90% accuracy in aligning with the English data that already exists within CLDR. So what that means is that the board game itself functions pretty well as a collection system for at least English language data on emojis, and we really hope that that is scalable. We had the physical board games that we brought yesterday, but we also hope to be able to bring this online so that language communities that have Wi-Fi access and have a digital device can experiment with playing it, and also giving us some user feedback. Bringing the principles from MokBlok over to describing Kimoji, again, these symbols and the game flow might not work for every culture, region, and language. So if there are tweaks that need to be made so that it makes sense across the world, we are happy to make those. And then just back to this slide to conclude MokBlok, and thank you guys so much for taking the time to hear more about these app ecosystems. I'm going to invite Tyler and Alyssa back up to answer any questions, and I'll try my best to think of what Neev would have said.
Very nice presentations, both of them. My question about Homescreen is, it seems to be a subtle influence on the survey takers when you're proposing certain concepts. I would think it would be hard. I know when I'm taking surveys, I can answer for myself, but when I'm asking about a language and what it uses, it might be very hard for me to think, oh, I should reject that because that should never be done in my language. That's kind of an extreme point of view. And so I'd be a little bit concerned for some of the, especially where you're offering solutions or suggesting that, oh, you have to have a truncation here, and it might look like this, that you're actually influencing people to think, oh, I wouldn't want to use that, but if they want to use it, I'm not going to tell them not to. So how do you escape providing what are essentially a lot of Western type influences when you're asking these questions? And you might come away with some things that people would tolerate, but that's not actually what they want.
Yeah, so thank you for your question. One of the things we really wanted to inform about is the contributors' way of putting in information. So when we look at CLDR and how they contribute language, they also have a column or a way to suggest notes and potential nuance within their language data. Homescreen draws from this, and with every microsurvey, we actually have a section at the end that verifies and allows users to put their nuance and potential notes for this type of information, as you suggested. Additionally, with the verification process, we want to reflect back at the user everything that they've essentially kind of provided in a way. So I agree on your point on rejection being a strong word to use. So to kind of add a little nuance and soften up that point, we reflect the questions back to them and their answers, and also add the potential for nuance with these notes at the end, if that answers your question.
Maybe also just to add on as well, I think your point is definitely well taken. And I think when we've been doing some like informal testing and gathering of data, it's definitely something we've noticed where contributors will say, oh, well, if we had to abbreviate this, like it might look like this, but it's just not natural. And so that's definitely a tension that's been coming up and that we, intend to be receptive to with these like open form sort of notes. And I think it's definitely something we're interested in just seeing like what are communities open to exploring, whether that's creating new abbreviations, new conventions around these different concepts, or if those just feel too Western or anything like that. We definitely want to take another look at the tool and see how we can accommodate that. Yeah.
So regarding the gamification of the language data collection process in Homescreen, Does the level progression at all reflect the CLDR's coverage level categories? And so, for example, to get basic coverage, you need certain information contributed, and then you can go up to further up in coverage levels. Is that progression reflected at all in Homescreen?
Yeah, that's kind of how we've designed it. So the first couple of levels are for CLDR basic, and then the rest of the survey is for, I believe it's moderate, like the next step up. We don't at this point cover the more advanced, like gendering plural stuff. We're more focused on the like middle and basic categories.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you all. I was really impressed by your projects, and I saw your webinar earlier this summer as well. So my question is, I would just love to learn how you scoped these projects, because I think they're so well identified and modular and built on each other. So if you could just walk us through that, that would be great. And then my second question is, what are your plans moving forward for making this sustainable and integrating with the CLDR efforts that are already in place? Thanks.
Thank you for your question. I, might have been the person that's most involved with Silicon throughout, the past couple of years, but I think, to be completely honest, there is no real structure that we've had in finding these projects. It's really tapping both into the interest and experience of, the brilliant, passionate students that we get to work with, and also having extensive conversations with them about what are the needs. Some of the projects have really been ideas driven by students themselves saying, like a student came to us say, did you know that there's this whole UX UI screenshot library for Korean, and this is the thing that all Korean designers use, and it exists for a variety of other languages, but we don't see that there is, a library that really encompasses a more global UX UI design principles. And so we're like, that's great, run with that. And I think for Homescreen, it was one of the anchoring projects for the summer. It was really and I'm sure that all of you have some familiarity with how hard it is to explain what CLDR is, why month abbreviations might be important, why some communities want to reject abbreviation altogether, and we definitely want to work towards solutions where that exists right now. It currently would be difficult to integrate with the infrastructure technologically that exists today. So I'm sorry that I don't have the best answer to your first question. I think the ethos of the project is really just exploring what is interesting to students, what students think might be helpful in the world of digital inclusion in general. And I also want to turn the question back to you guys of just, I know that you were kind of given the project as a challenge and how you ended up with the solutions that you did. So any thing that you found difficult or that you wanted to propose a new solution to? I know that you worked more with Tom over the summer, so.
One of the main things I did enjoy over the summer was the collaborative effort that we saw from the Silicon community and with the DeFi interns as well. The modularity of these works kind of go and work in hand with each other, since we all had these over several weeks and several meetings with each other. We were able to discuss the in-betweens for our projects, and kind of the modularity between each project goes with these discussions of, I think this would work better here, or I think this would work more better with your project. As we saw in Audrey's presentation, or I guess Neev's presentation, Neev's mock-ups went hand in hand with Qmoji, which is another presentation happening yesterday. Also, we saw that Neev's mockups were especially useful with Homescreen and how they interact with the UI mockups provided to the users to kind of reflect their answers back. So I think in terms of modularity, just going. There wasn't a really concrete way, I would say, to answer your question, to split these up. It was more of a giant collaborative effort, so to speak.
And I think what I found really fun about Homescreen was when I was going through CLDR survey tool and CLDR generally and trying to figure out like how to explain the concepts to myself, I was sort of thinking of these examples, like maybe I'm ordering food on DoorDash and I see like a currency sign or a decimal separator, or I'm scheduling an event and I have to deal with time zones and AM and PM and things like that. So it was really a fun challenge trying to like translate those examples and those concepts into really educational tools for Homescreen. And I think that also gets to your second question a little bit, like the sort of long-term maybe goals of the project. I think for Homescreen especially, we really want to help bring people in and sort of almost like give people a starting point to sort of like recruit them into the, language like digital inclusion world. So sort of like help prepare people to take the survey tool, to get involved with preserving their language, things like that. And I think that's like a common theme across all of our projects, is just trying to connect with people on the ground working to preserve their language and give them avenues to do so.
Yes, everything that they said. And I think one last point that I thought about when Tyler was talking is just how tech savvy everyone is, more than myself or Tom, that just in, I think, the first couple of weeks, there was so much exploration that we did and ideas that were popped up. It was almost more than anything, well, maybe that's for later, let's do this now, than it was thinking of what projects to work on. But yeah, Debbie, if anybody has any other questions.
My question was the same as sorry, my question had been the same as Anusha's. I was really interested in the sustainability of these efforts. So just kudos to you and the whole team. I was really impressed by the ideation process that led to this specific set of projects, but also how everybody went about doing it in a great set of results in a very short time. So I have anxiety about the sustainability, and I hope that you think about that and carry these forward, because I think they're great solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. I also have that anxiety all day, all the time. And I can talk more to the Anusha's second question now, which is we have kept on a number of summer interns as RAs working right now on integrating the different apps within the ecosystem more. You're both currently RAs. So there are a variety of projects that are assigned throughout the semester, and really seeing what ways we can automate the integration between the apps. I think UTW's presentations are mainly building off of demo day. So right after the summer concluded and all of the apps were working on being standalone and accessible to the public. So the next phase that we have is essentially integrating them hopefully into a hub where a language community can be onboarded and then explore what all the different possibilities will be. I will also say we're actively user testing the applications with language communities. So, over the summer, we didn't necessarily have the amount of interested language communities to provide real-time feedback. And I'll talk more, MokBlok is an example of an application that we have worked extensively with our partner in South Africa to produce some test cases for. We hear a lot of contributors say, no, absolutely, our language is not going to abbreviate it. It's not going to conform to these Western standards. And then sometimes they see a MokBlok mock-up and they say like, oh, interesting, a language related to my language does this. It might be possible that somebody in my language community would also appreciate that. Sometimes they say, no, that was not helpful. And then there's a ton of human work that goes into that process. And so I think to your point about the sustainability of it, we have a really big burst of energy during the summer, and then we try to maintain that momentum as much as possible throughout the rest of the year. And I think the rhythm that we've kind of found is using the summer for, a lot of innovation and building a lot of tools. And then during the downtime, we work with our external to Stanford partners to hear about what's really working for them and what's really not. And we hope that next summer's iteration is going to be a more complete hub that integrates all of these. And then I think also to the question of sustainability brings in the question of how open source the outputs of these should be, and in general, the applications of DFI should be. And I think that's also what is slowing down the rollout of these, is that we want to be really careful to consider whether, like Tyler and Alyssa said, direct integration into CLDR is something that we should push for. So yeah, I would love to have more conversations about that with anyone who has good suggestions.
So it's now time for a break. If you have any questions or comments, come on up and ask the team. Anyway, thank you.